that everything was good to go before we got started, but I think we're in good shape here. Hopefully everybody had a great St. Patrick's Day. The hangover hopefully gone. Adam Shar, Dave Lochran with you. 9-game slate, Monday, March 18th, 2019. How we doing, Adam?
Doing good. Pretty excited about this one. Lots of like mini slates to play in addition to the main slate. So got a bunch of money in play. Hopefully it goes well.
Well, if there was ever a time to jump right into it with the amount of news that we've gotten and we'll probably still get, let's just start. We've got 9 games to talk about, and many of which we've already had bombs dropped on us. I wrote the deep dive today and just basically was waiting, around every turn for more news, and we got it. But fortunately, most of it, if not all of the big news, came prior to me finishing. I don't think we're done yet, but just out of the gate, we're looking at no Blake Griffin, Tristan Thompson, Larry Nance both out. Kevin Love is questionable. Dennis Smith, Ntilikina out. Kyle Lowry is now expected to play, so that changes things. Kawhi Leonard out. Noah Vonleh out. Serge Ibaka suspended. Iguodala and Boogie out. Kevin Durant's coming back from that 2-game absence. Russell Westbrook suspended for the 16th technical. Rashawn Holmes, Kelly Oubre, Tyler Johnson are all out as well. So we'll start with Cleveland and Detroit, Adam. Still waiting on any news with Kevin Love, but no Thompson, no Larry Nance. On the other side, no Blake Griffin. Pistons are 5.5-point road favorites, a pretty low 211 total. Let's start with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Go ahead.
Not a whole lot of interest here to me. This slate in general, with the exception of like Lucca, is basically, I don't think anyone's a priority if there isn't a major injury on their team for the most part. Certainly not when you're talking about a bunch of terrible players going against a good defensive team in a slow matchup. So you should get a bunch of minutes for Chetty. You should get a bunch of minutes for Colin Sexton. Zizic is still really cheap, but there's just no priorities here for me, really, regardless of what happens with Kevin Love.
The only thing that keeps Zizic even remotely viable is the fact that he is playing a lot of minutes. I mean, on a per minute basis, from a production standpoint, he has not been good. And he's had some decent opportunities, decent matchups. I mean, yeah, he's going up against the big front court. Even with Blake out, I expect to see, even Thon Maker get a lot of those minutes. But I agree. Outside of Zizic, it's really ugly. If Love plays, I'm still not particularly high on him. Is there anything else here for Cleveland before we talk about a more interesting team in the Pistons?
No, I think this is a slate where we can definitely just kind of breeze through some teams, and Cleveland's one of them.
We're going to need to, because if we want to get to the good stuff, there's no way we can spend equal time on every team with the amount of news we've gotten. With Detroit, though, Blake Griffin's out. Andre Drummond, $8,600 on DraftKings. Just absurd. We'll get to that in a second. But, if you look, John Lore hasn't played in 3 games. 3 months ago, 2 months ago, maybe even a month ago, he would have been the logical replacement here for Griffin, or maybe Stanley Johnson. But Stanley Johnson's gone. Laura's not playing. Thon Maker's averaging 16.5 minutes per game since he's come over at the deadline. He's played about 86 minutes alongside Drummond. That's just under 6 per game. I wouldn't be surprised. I would be surprised if Dwayne Casey runs him out there next to Drummond for a good amount of minutes tonight.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And it's still not enough for me to really get to him, especially on FanDuel. He's a center instead of a power forward, which sucks. On DraftKings, there are enough underpriced guys where I don't really see myself getting there. But Blake's absence, I think, does have an impact on Andre Drummond, for one. You should see a slight increase in his assist percentage. The rebounding could go up even higher. Since the start of January, he's played 210 minutes without Blake on the floor. He's got a 29.4% rebounding percentage, which is about a point or two higher than what he averages anyway as, the best rebounder in the NBA. So you have that, but his usage rate over that stretch is also up to 27.5%. So it's kind of hard to find like a good sample of minutes for Drummond without Blake on the floor, because if you go back to last season, you get more minutes, obviously, but Drummond has just improved so much this season that I don't really want to use what he did at the end of last year. I think the main takeaway for me here is that I absolutely love Andre Drummond, and I want him in a lot of my lineups.
I don't see how you couldn't, particularly against this terrible Cleveland team. Yeah, they might play at a slow pace, but he's just going to gobble up every rebound. He's going to dominate the offensive glass. He's going to have unlimited putback opportunities. And while his assist rate doesn't really see an a big increase. Blake is still one of the better passing bigs in the league, so I don't think it hurts him there either. Just on the season, I mean, you went back a couple of months. Just on the season, like in the season alone, if we were to bring it back to October, 1.45 fantasy points per minute, 28.5% usage rate. Rebounding rate goes to 28.5% with Blake off the floor. I mean, there's really nothing not to like about him. And even on FanDuel, yeah, he's expensive, but I mean, Drummond still, just from an upside standpoint, from a ceiling perspective, Drummond could still go for 60 plus here and easily pay off that 10K price point.
Yeah, I agree. The DraftKings price is absurd. The FanDuel price, while it certainly doesn't look appealing, I still think that it's a pretty nice price tag. Like the only thing that you can come up with, I think, to not like Drummond is that this game in general should be a lot of half-court offense, just really slow pace. But still, it's an inefficient Cleveland team that should provide plenty of rebounding opportunities for Drummond. He should be more involved in basically everything. So I still really like Drummond.
So do I. And like I mentioned, I think going anywhere in place of Blake is very risky because it's really tough to say what we're going to see here. I do think that Maker probably plays around 24 minutes or so. He is minimum salary. You could do worse, but you don't need to get here. As you said, there's a lot of value. So if you're going here, and there aren't even any guys above on DraftKings. There's nobody above 9,700. So it's really not necessary. I do want to talk about Reggie Jackson for a second, though, because if you're looking at ownership, you're getting Dennis Schroder projected to be, and unsurprisingly, one of the highest owned players on this slate. He's facing Miami. We'll get to that game more in depth in a bit. He's facing Miami, slower paced team, a quality defense. He's been terrible lately. Volume should make it so it doesn't matter. I understand that. But I also think, Reggie Jackson at a similar price is not the worst play against a really bad Cleveland backcourt defense. Jackson's per minute rates haven't improved a lot with Blake off the floor, but his usage and his assist rate see a significant boost. If Reggie Jackson does happen to see 30 minutes tonight, I wouldn't be surprised to see a very strong game. It's the minutes, it's the playing time that has made it difficult to trust him lately.
Right, and I don't have him in the same category as Schroeder just because of the minutes, but I certainly think the opportunity should be there for him. And even with him projected at 28 minutes, I get him in a bunch of lineups. I'm in my initial DraftKings crunch where I basically just have everyone capped at 70%. It's not using my individual exposure caps yet, but he came into about 30% of my lineups there. On FanDuel, he popped up in like 25%. And it's what you said, not only does the usage go up a bit, and it's been at about 27.5% over the last month and a half anyway, but Blake is kind of the de facto point guard as far as, playmaking goes. So you do see Jackson's assist percentage jump up to nearly 30%, even when if you run numbers with him on the floor with Drummond without Blake, he's still at, 28% usage, about 30% assist percentage. So I do think that he's a good play on both sides.
Anybody else here before we move on?
It really drops off after that. I think that Luke Kennard or Wayne Ellington are interesting, just as, kind of fringe plays. But the only two guys that I'm prioritizing from this game are Drummond and Jackson.
Yeah, I can't. I have trouble getting to a Kennard or really anybody else that would benefit from Blake. It's tough for me to get there. But I do like Reggie. And obviously Drummond, a top play on this slate. Undoubtedly a top play on this slate. I'll tell you what, I was surprised just in terms of projected ownership, 22% on DraftKings. You say, or 21%. You say that's pretty high. But at 8,600 without Blake, he should be a lot higher than that. If Drummond ends up being 21%, that's significantly lower than he should be at 8,600.
I have him as a top 3 projected raw score play, and he's $8,600.
Yeah, right. I mean, top 3 projected raw scoring are Awesemo.com projections also have him as a top 3 projected scorer. Actually, let's see. Josh Engelman's projections have Drummond number 1 in raw projection. So in raw fantasy points. So there you have it.
Yeah, I have him either 1 or 2.
Right. And why shouldn't you? I mean, it's just a phenomenal spot all around. Let's move on. We'll talk Washington and Utah. Wizards here, 5.5 point dogs at home, 227.5 total. Look, Bradley Beal's been spectacular. when you're playing, I mean, he played 45 minutes in regulation the other day, followed it up on the second leg of a back-to-back with 39 minutes. I mean, Scott Brooks is going to run him till his legs fall off at center court and doesn't care. He's $9,400 on DraftKings. He's 10-7 on FanDuel. Let's just start here because it's obviously not a good matchup for Beal on one hand. And then on the other hand, he's leading the league in minutes since the deadline and has been very, very productive in those minutes. So where do you fall on somebody like Beal on a night where you have Paul George without Westbrook, you have Steph Curry without Cousins, you have Drummond, you have Irving, and a lot of other players, Doncic in the 8,900 range?
It's really difficult for me to get there. And really both teams from this game fall back to what I was saying about Cleveland, where if there's not a key player missing, it's really tough to prioritize anything. And that goes for Beal, who, in a vacuum at 9,400, I don't care who he's playing. I think that it's a favorable price tag. He's obviously more expensive on FanDuel, but when you start comparing him across the slate, I mean, he's $400 more than Lillard without McCollum. He's like 900 more than Booker without Oubre or Warren. He's more expensive than Curry. He's more expensive than Lucca. He's more expensive than all these guys. So it basically makes it impossible for me to get to him with any sort of regularity. And that really goes for this entire team in a tough matchup against Utah.
Right. Yeah.
Except for Satoransky, actually.
What's that?
Except maybe for Satoransky.
Well, what interest do you have in Satoransky here?
I'm looking to see. Nope, he dropped off too. I knew I was getting a lot of him early in the day, but as more news broke, I'm not really even getting to him.
Right. Yeah, Beal, I mean, he's the minutes are huge per minute basis. He's been like 1.35 or something, really solid. Look, everything's been great. And you know that Brooks is going to run him for huge minutes. The Washington Wizards they're 3 games out of the 8th spot, but they're going to keep fighting, or 3.5, I would assume, over the final 12 games of the season. But it's still not enough to prioritize him over a bunch of the names that I just rattled off because they're also similarly priced. I mean, from Doncic to Paul George, there's an $800 price difference on DraftKings, and the multi-position eligibility makes it so you can play these guys pretty much wherever you want.
Yeah, exactly. If I look at my top 5 raw point projections on DraftKings, we have Beal at 9,400. 4 of them are cheaper than Beal, and one of them is $300 more in Paul George.
Right. All right. What about the Utah side? Derek Favors has been playing well lately. He has seen his price come up. Rudy Gobert's facing a really weak front court defense for the Washington Wizards. I would assume if you're going anywhere, it's the front court. Maybe you have interest in Mitchell. I just had a difficult time getting there when there's guys like Booker without Oubre and Johnson and a bunch of other names similarly priced in that category or in that same tier. But I'll throw it over your way and see where we line up on this.
I'm in the same boat on Utah, really. It's obviously a better matchup than Washington has, but even with a favorable $8,300 price tag on Gobert, when I compare him across positions, there's just guys that I like a lot more. On FanDuel, his price tag is higher, and I'm getting more to Drummond or to DeAndre Ayton at a considerably cheaper price tag. So as good of a matchup as it is for Gobert, outside of sprinkling him into some tournament lineups, I don't really have that much interest. But he's still my favorite play on Utah because it is such a good matchup. I don't really see myself getting to Mitchell because there are so many really good guard options.
Right.
Derek Favors, it's a nice spot for him. He's playing really well, but 25 minutes still ends up being 25 minutes on a slate with this much, mid-range and upper mid-range value. It's just really tough to prioritize anything.
Right, and that's where I feel as well. I mean, is Rudy Gobert in a good spot? Absolutely. Going up against this Washington front court that's been battered by good centers ever since they brought in Portis and Thomas Bryant started seeing fewer minutes. But even before that, they were getting hammered. Derek Favors in a good spot. But the question is, how do you prioritize Rudy Gobert? Now, look, it doesn't mean that he's not viable, but how do you prioritize him at a $300 discount from Andre Drummond? That's what makes this really, really difficult to do. Not to mention that center has some value options as well. Yeah, I think you'd agree that on another slate, Utah might be one of our favorite teams.
Right. If every team were healthier, I mean, every team had their superstars in today, I think that I would feel really good about Rudy Gobert. But with how it is, there's a couple of things. So not only, is there, it's not like there's one or two guys priced around him. It's ownership should be spread out enough across this slate with it being 9 games and with there being so many different spots to go to that you're not getting something like, 60% Drummond to 2% Gobert. And with Blake out, I don't have them projected really even close to comparable. So it's just not a spot where outside of, a handful of lineups or something where I really see myself getting there.
Right. Hey, I'm with you. And it's not like Drummond's got a bad matchup either. He certainly doesn't. Let's move on then. We'll talk Boston and Denver. Boston Celtics 3.5-point favorites, 221 total. So, Adam, this is where I find the playoff race to be really, really interesting. The Boston Celtics, the Boston Celtics are 2 games back of the Sixers for the 3 seed in the East. They're 1 game back of the Pacers, who are idle. Now, or I'm sorry, not idle. They face Portland today. It's easy for me to forget about that game if we're being honest. So you have a 2-game separation between the 3 seed, who would face, the Pistons, the Nets, or the Heat. Likely going to be the Pistons or the Nets, or the 5 seed where you face the Pacers or the Sixers, or the 3 seed, or the 4 seed where you at least have home court advantage. So these are huge games for the Celtics going forward. I would expect Kyrie Irving in a competitive game, which I expect this one to be against the very good Nuggets team. By the way, they're only 1 game back of the Warriors for the lead in the West. I think Irving could play upwards. I'm not projecting him for this, but I think the added bonus is that he could play upwards of 38 minutes in this game, and I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, the minutes should definitely be there. And he's kind of like Rudy Gobert to me on this slate, where would it be surprising if he outscores the people around him? No, not really. But there are so many different players around him that I like that it still keeps me from really getting to a lot of him. If I project him for 36 minutes, I get him in that, 47 to 48 fantasy point range, which,
Right.
At 9,100 on DraftKings would normally be nice. But I have, Curry and Lillard and 6 other people projected better. So again, outside of Gordon Hayward, it's a fully healthy Boston team, and it keeps me from having a ton of interest in anything.
Yeah, I have Irving around 49.6 fantasy points, which is going to have him pop up a little more than you, I think. But I don't think your point is discredited in saying that, because there are a lot of guys around that tier, and we'll talk about them and reference them back to Irving so you understand where we're going with this, not just leave you hanging. But yeah, look, this number one, this should be a fun game to watch. I expect it to be a really solid one. Aside from that, though, do you get to Marcus Morris? Do you get to Jason Tatum with Gordon Hayward expected to sit? Is there anyone on Boston that you're landing on with any frequency?
Morris and Brown, I think, are the 2 that I'm getting to the most. And in that initial crunch, it still wasn't a lot. It was 11% Brown on FanDuel, 5% Morris on DraftKings. But keep in mind that because I have my exposure cap set so high, those numbers probably do come up a bit once I narrow it down on some questionable value that I was getting a lot of. But those are the 2 guys. I think Brown gets around 30 minutes. Coming off the bench should be nice for him, right around a 23.5% usage rate here. And then Marcus Morris, playing bigger minutes lately. Hayward out shouldn't hurt his minutes. I have him in for about 33, and I think he's still cheap enough. So both of those guys, I think, are my favorite spots to get to from Boston.
All right. On the other side of this one, you have Denver. I want to talk about Jokic for a second, because we've now seen his price tag come down significantly. He's 9,200 on DraftKings, 9,800 on FanDuel. If I told you that a month ago, you'd think I was crazy. But it's been the case. He's now finished with fewer than 50 fantasy points in 7 of his last 8 games, and that matters for people who have played him because he has been pretty rough in some spots. Now, against Indy, he got ejected late in that game. Probably would have had a few more points. Against Dallas, he's the reason they won at the end, but from a fantasy standpoint, that doesn't do shit for you. against the Pelicans. He played 22 minutes, was on pace for like 80 fantasy points, but was in constant foul trouble. So there are a lot of ways that you could kind of explain away some of this as just, bad luck and, taking a backseat role and not shooting. But the truth is that Jokic has not been great from a fantasy standpoint lately, which is what we care about. At 9,200 and 9,800, where do you stand on Jokic against a good Boston defense?
He's another player that on a different slate, I think I'd be getting a lot of. Like, I haven't projected as a top 6 or 7, scorer on the slate. It's just on this one, there are, again, so many guys in that price range. It's a good center position. If you look at his numbers this season with Harris, Millsap, Barton, Murray on the floor alongside him, he's played almost 200 minutes, only about a 24% usage rate, but still close to a 40% assist percentage, still averaging right around 1.5 fantasy points per minute. I think that the main takeaway for him is that he is a more volatile option now that everyone's healthy. Millsap's playing more minutes alongside of him and stuff like that. He still can go out there and post the high usage rate like he did last game, but there's just more mouths to feed. And we know that he is perfectly willing to just be the playmaker and the passer in this offense. So it's not the really steady, 1.6 points per minute that we were seeing for a lot of this season. He still has that kind of upside. It's just not going to consistently happen. This obviously is a tough matchup against Boston. There's upside at the price tag, but that's the case for just so many guys on this slate that, he came in that initial crunch around like 10% on FanDuel and like 5 on DraftKings.
Jamal Murray had a career-high 48 points against the Celtics earlier this season. Definitely a surprising monster performance in a tough spot. 6,100 on DraftKings. On FanDuel, he's also pretty inexpensive compared to a few of these other players at 7,100. Any thoughts on Jamal Murray or the rest of this Denver team?
Fringe tournament play for me. Clearly has upside at 6,100, but in that same price range with like a Dennis Schroder who's getting a massive increase in his opportunities, it's tough to prioritize him.
The difficulty with Murray too is that he's so scoring dependent. I mean,
right.
He might have point guard next to his name. He might start at the point, but more times than not, he's finishing with 5 or fewer assists. So if you get 20 points from him, and you get his normal rebound and assist totals, he's giving you like 30, 33, and it's not getting there unless he's racking up 30-plus real points, and that's not happening all that frequently. So
right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because Jokic, even when he's not shooting, Jokic still picks up a ton of assists.
Right. Jokic is just so influential in terms of the offense flowing through him. Let's get to a game where we're going to spend a lot of time on. Toronto at home against the Knicks, 12.5-point favorites, 214 total. New York Knicks coming off an emotional win over LeBron James and the Lakers. Mario Hezonja, if you didn't see that, stuffed LeBron on the final possession. That made me smile.
Stared him down, too.
Oh, man. It's funny, like, for the season that Mario Hezonja's had, and it has not been good, he has had 2 incredible plays. The stepping over Giannis play and blocking LeBron James. So he's got a couple nice things to take away from 2018-19. We'll see if he can play some minutes today. We'll get to them after we talk about Toronto. Serge Ibaka suspended. Kawhi Leonard out. Kyle Lowry with that ankle sprain. This was not a rest thing, is probable. So, now Fred VanVleet, who would have been, he would have been the highest owned player on this slate over Schroder. I feel pretty confident about that. I think he'll still get decent minutes, but I mean, it's just with Lowry in, it's a totally different situation. It changes a lot for a lot of players, Adam, because if Lowry joined Ibaka and Leonard on the sidelines, we'd be having a totally different conversation. So let's talk about how we're approaching this Toronto team now that we have a pretty good idea of who's in and who's out.
Yeah, so I still think VanVleet gets upper 20s in minutes.
Kevin Love just got ruled out, by the way.
Great. Does that change anything for you? Marquise Chris gets more minutes, I guess?
I think Jijic probably plays like 34, 35. It doesn't really make much of a difference.
I think he does become more productive without Love.
Yeah, he should. He should.
Yeah.
He still has to compete with Andre Drummond, but just
right.
in terms of...
Yeah, it's still Ante Zizic on a crazy slate with a ton of high upside guys. So it's not like he's a priority, but I do think it helps him.
Yeah, the benefit is that he'll get a lot of minutes. He'll be the biggest player on his team. Defensive rebounding should benefit him, but it could be a rough night. Look, at his price point, if you're I'm going to project him probably for around 34 minutes. Yeah, I would think he plays about 34 minutes. That's about all there is to it. By the way, since we just covered this game, Gordon Hayward is officially out and Al Horford's in. So go ahead with Toronto.
Yeah, so Lowry becomes a reasonably good play. 7,300 on DraftKings is pretty appealing. A 23.5% usage rate for him since the start of January without Kawhi on the floor, averaging about 1 fantasy point per minute. The thing is, 1 fantasy point per minute on this slate really just still doesn't mean shit. So I don't expect to get a lot of him. More interested in the front court, though. You have an underpriced Marc Gasol still, who should play around 32 minutes here. New York does have good defensive centers, as bad as they are overall, but Gasol just does so many things across the board that I think that he's still an appealing play. The same goes for Pascal Siakam, who has sucked the last couple of games, but he still is a really good basketball player, does a lot, just like Gasol does as far as rebounding, assists, in addition to his scoring. More favorable matchup for him than Gasol as far as individual defense goes. So I like the two front court guys here more than anything.
So do I. And to be clear, if you look at whether it's OG Anunoby or Powell or whatever, Nick Nurse, the last 5 times Leonard's been out, has started a different lineup. Not really fun to figure that out when most of these guys aren't highly productive anyway, whether it's McCaw, who was in there at one point, Powell, Anunoby, Lowry started alongside Van Vliet one of the games. It's just, I don't really have much interest in trying to figure it out. Whereas with Marc Gasol, look, he played 26 minutes in that win over the Lakers. I think Nurse knew that they had it under control. He never came back, but then he played 37 minutes against Detroit last night or yesterday. Does that worry you at all? That was actually an afternoon game. Did he play 37 minutes yesterday?
Not really. I have him at like 32 minutes today. I'm not projecting him for 36 or anything like that, but they just don't have that many options. Like, you have Moreland, you have Chris Boucher, and then you have Siakam. So, I think that 30 to 32 is more likely than 36, 37, but at his price tag, that still gets me plenty of Gasol.
Yeah, I have him at 32 as well, and that's more than enough to get what you need of him. Or from him. It's funny because he played only 58 or so minutes with Lowry also off the court this year, and his rates are insane, as they should be. I was hoping Lowry would sit. But Siakam and Gasol, to me, are the two guys. I'm not really interested in trying to figure out which one of these wings is going to give me 23 fantasy points, Adam.
Yeah, if you're max entering tournaments, then rotate through those guys. Van Vliet's price tag is still cheap enough where there's some value there. Powell has, some upside if he gets the minutes. OG sucks, not at basketball, but from a DFS standpoint. And there's really nobody on the Knicks that makes me think OG needs to go out there and play a bunch of minutes, because all he really does is play defense. So I would rank them Van Vliet, Powell, OG, Lynn, and I wouldn't really want to play them together.
Yeah, I don't even want to rank Lynn. Like, that's how bad this dude's been. With Lowry in, plus Nick Nurse started Van Vliet in the second half over Lynn yesterday.
Uh-huh.
I don't think he's been impressed. Put it that way. Who knows?
You don't think that he likes his 17% 3-point shooter?
No, I think he's okay going elsewhere. Now, the Knicks side of the ball is interesting. Smith Jr. is out. Ntilikina's out. Noah Vonleh's out. Well, I guess we can start with the backcourt here. Emmanuel Mudiay's played 36, 32, 33 minutes over his last 3 games. I expect him to play big minutes again. Unless this game's a total wash and they get the doors blown off, I think he'd still play around 32 minutes in that case. And yeah, it's not a good matchup, but he's still going to get a lot of run. He's still sub 5K on DraftKings and FanDuel. He's 27.5% usage player when you take Hardaway off the court along with Cantor and whoever else it was, Noah Vonleh. So it's not crazy. What are your thoughts on guys like Mudiay and Hezonja, who, as we said, played 36 minutes yesterday and Vonleh's out today.
So it obviously starts with the caveat that we're always kind of guessing with the Knicks because it changes from day to day. But, all we can really do is the best we can at predicting what they're going to do. I have Moody at 32 minutes. Like you said, he's still a high usage guy. Not a good matchup, but cheap enough and should get the minutes to where he's one of my favorite value, guards on the slate. The price tag, I think, is just too cheap for the opportunity he has. Hezonja played 37 minutes yesterday. I have him projected for about 29 today, and he still gets into a bunch of my lineups because of how cheap he is. So that makes me as comfortable as I'm ever going to be with Hezonja, just because I have him projected for fewer minutes than he could play, and I'm still getting quite a bit. So those are the two guys I'm getting the most of, followed by Damian Dotson, who played 41 minutes yesterday. I have him projected for 36 today. Has almost a 21% usage rate since the Tim Hardaway trade. Just another, kind of cheap filler guy.
I'll put it to you this way: if we're comparing 1-1 or 1-3 in terms of Toronto, I prefer Hezonja over Powell or Anunoby, and I know it's a risk.
Yeah.
I get it with Fizdale, and look, there's some intangibles here. Maybe Fizdale's saying, "Hey, you know what, Mario? Great stuff last night, pal, or yesterday. Good stuff, man. Blocking LeBron James in an emotional win at the Garden. I'm going to give you some minutes today in another useful game." That's what I want to believe is going to happen. Will it? I don't know. Fizdale doesn't have a soul for the most part. But no, I just think with Vonleh out, you don't need to get into any silly narratives here. Hezonja, his minutes have been pretty all over the place, but at the same time, I still expect him to get close to 30. If not, well, we'll see. But I think there's a good chance that he will.
That's where I'm at too. Would I be surprised if at the end of the night I'm pissed off because Hezonja cost me a ton of money? No, not at all. But he's so cheap and has a easier path to like 30 plus minutes than guys like Powell or Anunoby do. And it's not like he's a much worse like point per minute producer than those guys are. So yeah, it's, he's cheap enough where, FanDuel, you can drop him, and DraftKings, he can play bad and still kind of salvage. So, it's whatever. You just hope for the best.
He was active against the Spurs on the 15th, didn't play. And that was the first game that he had been back since that injury suffered against the Sixers. But then in his first game actually getting any action, he played 36 minutes. So, yeah, I'm willing to roll the dice there. Plus, they are shorthanded. I want to ask you about DeAndre Jordan, though. You can look at Jordan and be like, yeah, he's averaging a very solid double-double over his last 3 games, 31-plus minutes in all of them. But what stood out the most to me is his rebound or his assisting. I mean, he came an assist shy of a triple-double against the Spurs. He came 3 assists shy yesterday of a triple-double. He's averaging 7 assists over his last 3 games. Has actually been involved as a passer, which is no surprise. He has 13 turnovers over that span. He's getting more touches. He's getting more opportunity to actually be used as a playmaker. What are your thoughts on Jordan at 5,800 on DraftKings, 66 on FanDuel?
Playing big minutes too.
Yeah, yeah.
So I have some interest in tournaments. It's just that, again, you have Marcus All at the same price point. You have DeAndre Ayton at the same price point. You have Nurkic on DraftKings at a similar price point. So he's not a priority for me, but I will have some DeAndre Jordan in tournaments.
Yeah, I like him today. I do. Granted,
I imagine I'll have less Jordan than Moutier or Hezonja.
Fair enough. Anybody else?
And by imagine, I mean can basically guarantee.
Anyone else for the Knicks?
No.
All right, let's move along. OKC and Miami. Very low total here. 211.5 in a Thunder game. Thunder 5.5-point favorites. Russell Westbrook, as earlier noted, suspended for that 16th tech. Well, Paul George is 9,700 on DraftKings, Adam. On FanDuel, he's 11-2. Schroder's 5,100 on DraftKings, 6K on FanDuel. Shooting guard eligible, by the way. Well, let's just start with Paul George here, who, as we know, is going to be a popular play with Russell Westbrook, the usage monster, off the floor.
Yeah, so I mean, the matchup against Miami sucks in terms of pace, in terms of them being quality defense.
I hate it.
All you have to really do is look to yesterday that defensively they will scheme to take away a best player and have success with it, like they did against Kemba Walker. But at the same time, George just does so much on the floor. He plays so many minutes. His DraftKings price tag, while it is the most expensive on the slate, is still very reasonable at less than $10,000. FanDuel, he's more expensive, but he's valuable because of the position. And going back to last season when he's played alongside Schroder without Westbrook, so basically projecting him for the least productive minutes that I reasonably can, because anything without Schroder is even more productive. He still has a 32.9% usage rate, a 21% assist percentage. Since last season, he's averaged about 1.23 points per minute, but I don't think there's any argument that he's just a better basketball player this season than he was last season. He's averaged closer to about 1.4 points per minute this year. So still, really like Paul George quite a lot.
Yeah, me too. Look, it's just hard to get away from that, honestly. You're going to have a very tough time convincing yourself. You're going to have a very tough time convincing yourself that Paul George here is not a strong option. Look, I hate the Miami matchup. I really do, especially for bigs. They do a great job of preventing scoring in the paint. They slow the game down. They have one of the better defenses in the league. I don't like it, but I don't really think it matters when you're talking about the volume here, and Paul George is going to see a ton of it. Not only that, you want to talk standings? Well, think of this, Adam. When you think of a log jam, there's no bigger log jam than in the West right now. The 4th seed Blazers are 42-27. The 8th seed Clippers are 41-30. So yes, there's a 3-loss difference, but they're separated by 1 game in the win column. So in the win column, you got, or basically a 2-game difference from the 4 seed to the 8th seed. The Thunder are sitting in 5th, a half a game behind the Pacers. Huge game for them tonight, and a big game for the Miami Heat, who are clinging on to the 8th seed in the East.
Yeah. One other thing that I wanted to add to George, for anyone that watched the show with Josh this morning, I have backed off as far as him being one of my highest owned guys on the slate, just from, just seeing how roster construction breaks out. There is value at the small forward position with Hezonja, with Derek Jones Jr. Justice Winslow actually was just ruled out. So with Derek Jones Jr., and then you also have Durant back at, a much cheaper price tag. So,
and you also have Otto Porter out.
Cool. Awesome. So from an ownership standpoint, and on DraftKings, obviously Lucca is the same position as George. So from an ownership standpoint, I'm not getting as much as I expected to this morning. I still haven't projected as one of the highest scorers on the slate, though.
Right. I think it's a pretty reasonable take. Small forward on FanDuel keeps getting thinner. No Kawhi Leonard, no Otto Porter now, no Kelly Oubre. I mean, man, it's ugly.
Yeah, I mean, but you can just play Mario Hezonja and Derek Jones Jr. in 2/3 of your lineups, and
right. Yeah, I mean, what is there not to feel great about? Yeah, slide some $5,100 Mikal Bridges in there, and everything looks great. I hear you.
Troy Brown is at 13% of my initial crunch, if that tells you how that position looks.
Who?
Troy Brown.
Oh, good. That's that should work out swimmingly. And I guess we have to touch on Dennis Schroder here. I'll let you do that. Take the honors.
Yeah, it should just play, a bunch of minutes here. He's averaged right around the fantasy point per minute alongside George without Westbrook. And at his price point, that's enough to, make him a good play. Again, I hate the matchup against Miami, but he's just an example of someone that's priced correctly for his normal role, but he now is forced into a role where he becomes close to a 30% usage player in addition to playing, 34, 36 minutes. So I have no reason not to like Schroder.
And if you're mixing in a lot of players, you're playing 150 lineups tonight or more, Jeremy Grant's not terrible either. He does see a decent boost with Westbrook off the floor this year. Usage increases about 2.5%, almost 3%. Rebounding jumps up 2.5%. Per minute, he goes up from like 0.78 to 0.87. In a big game, I expect him to play around 32, 33 minutes. So you could do worse than Jeremy Grant at $4,400 on DraftKings. It's just slow a pace down spot for him. I do think he benefits actually quite a bit from no Westbrook on the floor because unlike most guards, Westbrook has a huge impact on rebounding for the Oklahoma City Thunder. What about the Miami Heat?
I'm done. Derek Jones Jr., sorry. Derek Jones should play like 26, 27 minutes. He's dependent on defensive stats and stuff, but it being a pace-up spot where he does have a player to defend in Paul George is pretty nice. I expect him to see plenty of time on him. He'll have an opportunity for steals and blocks, and it's a game where he can get out and run a little bit, use his athleticism. So he's still cheap enough. He's the dead min on FanDuel, and he's cheap on DraftKings as well, to where I'm getting a lot of him just because of the price.
Do you think he's safe for 27 minutes or so?
Safe?
Not to produce, but safe to get those minutes because Spoelstra's he's been a wild man this season too when it comes to rotations for his wing players. He's got such a deep bench if he needs it.
Yeah, I think it depends on how he plays. Obviously, barring foul trouble. He played 24 minutes yesterday. He didn't play at all in the third quarter. James Johnson emerged and played 28 minutes. Yeah, 24. Yeah, I guess 24 to 26 probably.
Right.
He definitely could play more minutes than he played yesterday, but he also did play well yesterday and still only played 24 minutes.
Rodney McGruder ruled out.
That does not matter.
No, but it's another Miami player that is inactive today. Dwayne Wade's expected. What's that?
How much is James? I was looking to see how much James Johnson is. 4K on FanDuel.
On DraftKings, he's 3,100. So, but I'm assuming you're talking Derek Jones specifically small forward eligible on FanDuel.
Yeah, that's where he's the most appealing. But also, I think you can get a lot of minutes out of James Johnson though.
All right. We just had a question in our premium chat, Slack chat, of course, from Jay Kelly. Any love for Bam? Personally, I don't see myself getting to a ton of him. If he was a little bit less expensive, I'd get it. I know it's a pace-up spot against OKC. I don't think it's terrible, but at that price point, it's a lot harder for me to get there if he had come back down into the low 4K range. Thoughts on Adebayo for you, Adam?
More appealing on FanDuel at power forward at only 5,800, but not getting a lot of him regardless.
All right, let's talk San Antonio and Golden State. The Spurs riding an 8-game winning streak. This team has totally changed things around. Since that 7-game road trip. I think it's San Antonio. They call it a rodeo trip. Correct me if I'm wrong. I know we got some Spurs fans. Don't want to. What'd you say?
I said you're right. It's when the rodeo or whatever is at their arena for like 2 weeks.
Yeah. So you have the Spurs just been ridiculously good, and they are playing. Hold on, let me just make sure that this news breaking is not. All right, that's all for tomorrow. They've won 8 straight games, and these 8 straight games have come directly after the road trip. So they go 1-6. 1-6 on the road stretch. They got a win over Memphis. They won by 1 point. And then, Adam, they've won 8 straight, all of them in March, dating back to the 27th of February. So they're playing very good basketball right now. But on the others, it doesn't really concern me. What I want to talk about, well, you know what? How about this? Getting a little out of control here. 226 total, first of all. Warriors 2.5-point favorites on the road. Let's talk about the Spurs first, because I actually have a lot to talk about when it comes to the Warriors. Not nearly as much from the Spurs. So I'll let you. Well, let's get them out of the way first. Maybe you have something in San Antonio that I'm not looking at.
No, same thing for me. Nothing that is really a priority for me. Aldridge and DeRozan clearly are guys with upside, but there are just so many guys on the slate that I would rather roster. Derek White actually grades out as the best San Antonio play for me, but you still have guys like Moutier and Schroder for less money. You have Kyle Lowry in his price range. You have a million guards to pay for at the top. So again, just kind of a spot where on other slates, I think I'd be interested, but on this one, I'm not.
All right, I'm with you. With the Golden State Warriors, Elfrid Payton, imagine this. Elfrid Payton is $100 cheaper than Steph Curry on FanDuel. That's amazing. That's
it is
incredible. But DeMarcus Cousins being off the court makes a difference. Now, if you were to just look at this season with no Cousins, Curry is 1.42 fantasy points per minute, 32% usage, 23% assist rate. His assist rate's been down all year long, but still, 8.4 rebound rate. With Boogie on the court, 1.11 fantasy points per minute, 24.8% usage, down from 31.8, 19.6% assist rate, sub 20%, 7.3% rebounding. So, yes, Kevin Durant coming back certainly makes an impact, but the effect that Cousins has had on Curry is huge this year, Adam, and we've seen it ever since he came made his debut on January 18th.
Yeah, exactly. If Durant were out, then it would be just Curry like everywhere for me.
Yeah.
With Durant in, it obviously takes some of the shine away. But like you said, without Cousins on the floor, 32.2% usage for Curry. And that factors in that there's a good chance here that he has his minutes staggered with Durant since Cousins isn't in there and, gets some time without Durant on the floor. It's still tough for me to get to Curry over like a Dame Lillard on DraftKings, but on FanDuel, I get more Curry because he's 9,400, Dame's up over 10K. So Curry comes out as a little bit better. It's definitely getting more Curry for me on FanDuel than DraftKings.
I don't even think it's close. I mean, number one, on FanDuel, he's literally $100 more than Elfrid Payton. It's insane. And then also, if you were to just look at other comparative pricing, Kyrie Irving, let's say you like him, is $1,200 more than Steph Curry. Dennis Schroeder's shooting guard eligible on FanDuel. On DraftKings, Curry's eligible at point guard and shooting guard, and he's basically the same price as guys like Irving and Lillard and Doncic. And I like Doncic more, but I think you get the point. And Elfrid Payton is $7,500 and $1,800 less expensive. I don't even think you can draw a comparison there. Now, that's not to say I don't like Curry on DraftKings, but he's a way better play on FanDuel. And that's pretty clear just looking at who's around him and the positional eligibility on both sites. What about the rest of the Warriors?
Kevin Durant's price tag is appealing, like 9,600 on FanDuel when George is 11-2. I'm getting more Durant, at least in my initial crunches there. 8,800 on DraftKings is cheaper than you really ever see him. But again, he's just in that price group where there's a million guys that I like more. So more Durant on FanDuel for me as well. Draymond Green is a secondary option. Clay's a secondary option for me. Andrew Bogut expected to play tonight, so that took a couple minutes away from what I would normally project for Kevon Looney when Cousins is out. So it's pretty much, Curry and Durant and more so on FanDuel for me.
All right. Oh, man. Curry's really the one that to me stands out the most. Anyway, do you want to move on to the next one? We got 3 to go here. We got about 18 minutes. I think we're making good time because we got 2 games we're going to spend a bunch of time on.
Yep.
Before we do, I want to let you know a couple of things. First of all, if you and 2 of your friends want to get a free month subscription to awesemo.com, well, I can tell you how to do it. If you go to Twitter and go to the Awesemo handle, it's awesemo_com, like .com, but _com, and check out the pinned tweet that's got 2 suns. It says Spring Break Giveaway. And then it says, if you could attend any sporting event, past or present, which would it be? So to win a free month for you and 2 of your friends, be the coolest guy around, retweet it and tag 2 of your friends in the retweet if you want to quote tweet it, and tell us which event you would want to attend and why. That's all you got to do to be entered to win for you and 2 of your friends a free premium membership month at awesemo.com. Also, other ways, if you want to get 50% off your first month, here's how you do it. Go to awesemo.com, not _com. I don't know where that'll take you. Awesemo.com, click sign up at the top left on the homepage, select your plan, and then use the promo code Deeper Dive, all one word, Deeper Dive, to get half off, 50% off the top, your first month of membership at awesemo.com. Otherwise, you could do weekly memberships. You can enter by using the spring break sweepstakes. There's a bunch of different ways. But using the Deeper Dive promo code, all one word, you can get a half off your first month membership and not have to wait for any drawing either. That includes the Fantasy Cruncher add-on, our projections for every sport out there, ownership projections, Alex Baker, Awesemo himself, all of his content. What else? Our articles that Adam and I labor over every day, a ton of other tools, the lineup builder, Ben Ross's golf. There's a ton. Just go check it out for yourself before you sign up. Don't let me tell you. Check it out for yourself. And say hi to us in Slack chat when you sign up, where we're talking DFS pretty much at all hours of every day. All right, Adam, let's get to it. Dallas and New Orleans. The Dallas Mavericks are 4.5-point favorites, 232.5 total. Alvin Gentry's team clearly not looking to win around this time of year. Lucca Doncic, $8,900 on DraftKings. And on FanDuel, I don't really care what price he is because he's shooting guard eligible. Sure, he's fatigued. I get it. And I think he is. But it doesn't really matter when you lead your team in usage, assists, and rebounding and per minute production. You could be as tired as you want as long as the minutes and volume are there. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, and he also is facing one of the fastest teams in the NBA, who also is one of the least efficient defenses. I have Lucca projected as the top scorer on the slate, and he's relatively inexpensive. I don't think that me having Lucca's – actually, he might be the second highest behind Drummond now, but either way, he's a top 2 or 3 scorer for me, and he's cheap. There's just so many different ways that he can contribute here. No Drew Holiday takes their best on-ball defender off the floor as well. Pace-up spot, obviously, should still play 33, 34 minutes. And like you said, leads the team in usage, rebounding, and assist percentages. I have no reason not to like Lucca. And the matchup, I think, is really important because while there are a lot of spots on this slate where someone's missing and it makes a couple of players really good plays, there are very few actual good matchups in terms of pace and, poor defenses. And Lucca gets one here. So, he's probably my highest owned player on both sites.
Yeah, you have to love him. Like I said, on DraftKings, because he's 8,900, on FanDuel, because he's shooting guard eligible, it makes a huge difference. Since the deadline, Lucca Doncic, is putting a pretty 35% usage, 38% assist rate, 15% rebounding rate, 1.37 fantasy points per minute. There's just no reason he should be 8,900. I mean, it's really that simple.
He's a 10,000 plus player, and I don't think he's reached that price point yet this year.
Yep. Outside of that, you have Dwight Powell, power forward eligible on FanDuel, $6,200 on DraftKings, so that's interesting. People had asked me about Hardaway earlier today. My honest opinion on him is, on a slate like this, I know he's playing more minutes, but I just don't know if Hardaway has the ceiling. And even against New Orleans, it's tough for me to get there. But I do think Dwight Powell, particularly on FanDuel's in an interesting spot in a pace-up matchup. I don't feel like paying $6K plus for Jalen Brunson. Where are you going elsewhere than Doncic on the Mavericks?
I'm with you on Powell. Kind of just sprinkling in the lineups for me on DraftKings, but huge priority for me at power forward on FanDuel. Hardaway, I kind of agree, but the minutes have just been 36 and 37 minutes the last couple of games.
Well, Doncic was out for what it's worth. Doncic missed one of them.
Yeah. If I project him for 34, I get him as a secondary option. I'm okay with that. Brunson, better play for me on FanDuel than DraftKings. Got him around 10 to 15% there. Okay.
Yeah, 6,100. I have no problem getting away from that on DraftKings specifically. That's tough. On the other side, so check this out. In 5 games since Holiday went down, I had tweeted this out earlier today because it's pretty incredible. We know that Elfrid Payton has 4 straight triple doubles, but looking deeper into it, here's where he ranks against the rest of the league, Adam, in those 5 games. Second in touches with 98 touches per game. first in the league in potential assists with 20.8 per game, and first among all guards in rebound chances with 16.2 per game. Even in drives, he's averaging 14.5 drives per game. Elfrid Payton right now is doing everything for the New Orleans Pelicans. The question is, and obviously we're not talking FanDuel at 9,300. Forget about that. On DraftKings at 7,500, where does Elfrid Payton fall into things for you? Because he has been outstanding. He's playing huge minutes. Has his price come up enough where you're getting away from him?
Not on DraftKings. I mean, I still like him there. It's not a huge priority on this slate, but I think he's very comparable to Kyle Lowry, who I imagine will have. Actually, I'm not sure. I would rather have whichever of them is lower owned if I were like hand building a single entry lineup. The assist percentage is up over 40% without Drew on the floor this season. The usage jumps to between 20 and 21%. He's just a different player than when he's out there with Drew. He reverts back to what he was, in prior seasons where he was on less talented teams, and he takes on a bigger role, just doing everything. So I think this is a perfectly fine matchup. I, again, have no interest in the FanDuel price tag, but on DraftKings as a secondary option, I think he's fine. If you did want one thing to be concerned about, this is a 3-4 for New Orleans. He has played 41 and 37 minutes in the first two games of the 3-4.
Yeah. Yeah, if you just have a bad feeling about him and you want to get away from him, there's your reason. But just from a volume and opportunity standpoint, there's nothing that he has not done recently to make you feel like he should keep at least having the opportunity to play well. Not saying he will, but when you're talking, this, you look at these specific stats all the time. 21 potential assists, 16.5 rebound chances, 19 or 98 touches per game. Those are monster type numbers. If you're seeing even close to that on an average with Holiday out, you're going to have more good games than bad. I can tell you that much.
Yep.
What about the rest of this team? Julius Randle, $8K on DraftKings. On FanDuel, Randle is the most expensive power forward at 8,900. Anthony Davis obviously playing 21, 22 minutes per game. Anybody outside of Randle that stands out to you? Or sorry, Elfrid Payton.
Randle's the other one. Everyone else just kind of falls off a cliff. But Randle, I have no issue getting the sum of him just because he has been a lot more productive without Drew. 32% usage, 18.5% assist percentage. Some concern about his minutes. We had Gentry before the last game say that he was likely to play closer to 30 minutes than the 36 he had been playing. He played around 28 in regulation. It's not entirely clear if that was just because he had played huge minutes on the front end of the back-to-back or if they're starting to manage his minutes going forward. But if I project him for 32 or 33 minutes, I get him in around 15% of my lineups on both sides.
All right. Should we move on? We've got 2 to go.
Yep.
Let's do it. Phoenix and Chicago. Phoenix at home. 1-point favorites. 227 total. That may have changed with the Otto Porter news, but it's hardly important. Phoenix, 2-point favorites. 226.5 total. Now, you have no Tyler Johnson. By the way, as I mentioned, Nick Nurse doing what he does best. Fred VanVleet will start. Here's another different lineup than we've seen. It was not out of the realm of possibility at all because this has happened a lot. And Kyle Lowry is confirmed active. So VanVleet starting alongside Kyle Lowry. Do it that as you want. Like I said, I'm not trying to play the guessing game with the wings. If anybody, it would be VanVleet, but alongside Lowry, he's a whole lot less appealing. All right, no Tyler Johnson, no Kelly Oubre. Obviously, TJ Warren hasn't played since January. No Rashawn Holmes either. Devin Booker, you've talked about, there's a lot of guards and a lot of these guys you haven't been able to get into your lineups, right? Because there's a lot of depth elsewhere. Where are you at on somebody like Devin Booker here who's facing a bottom 5 Chicago defense? Bulls are actually averaging 101 possessions per 48 since the deadline, so not crazy slow. Where are you at on Booker here against the Bulls?
Yeah, Booker's one of the priorities for me, especially on DraftKings where he's only 8,500. Without Warren or Ariza or Johnson or Oubre on the floor this year, like a 35.5% usage rate for Booker. The assist percentage is still up around 30%. He's playing huge minutes. Both of these teams suck, so it should be a competitive game. He's standing out as where he's the same price as Lucca on FanDuel. I am obviously getting more Lucca, but on DraftKings, where there's just more roster flexibility, getting a lot of Devin Booker.
Yeah, so essentially, we had a question from Achilles in Slack chat. Where does Booker fit in amongst spend-ups like Doncic on DraftKings? I have him below Doncic, but I still really like Devin Booker. I mean, not only is he your de facto point guard, and he always kind of has been, but with Tyler Johnson out, even more so. Take Kelly Oubre out, too. There's one of your higher usage players in the starting lineup. Like, this is just an excellent spot. It's not often that the Suns are favored either. So you have that working for you, meaning Booker should see monster minutes here. I really like him a lot. In terms of value, whether you like this guy or not, Josh Jackson's probably going to play a lot of minutes. Mikal Bridges will probably play a lot. I do like Jackson a bit more, but both of them should play minutes. When you look at what they have to work with Oubre and Warren out, Rashawn Holmes out, meaning that Bender's going to have to play backup 5 minutes, you're talking about Jackson, Bridges, and Ray Spalding, Adam.
Yeah, not entirely sure Bender picks up the backup 5 minutes just because Spalding got most of them last game. That concerns me a bit. I had a lot of Bender last game and kind of lucked into a good game.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, though. Even if he doesn't, let's say it's Spalding. Even if he doesn't, my point is one of these guys is going to have to back up the 5 with Holmes out, which takes one more guy away from the power forward position.
Right. Yeah, the minutes will be there. I was just saying because if Bender were getting the backup 5 minutes, I would actually like him because he is more productive when he plays center. But he's not, and we saw Ray Spalding just kind of crush in his 10 minutes or whatever. So as far as Jackson goes, though, yeah, he's cheap. He's a good value option. The price tags come up, but he's still affordable. Same goes for Bridges. Assuming Melton is still in the starting lineup, which I don't think is a lock, but it most likely happens. I still think you get around 26 minutes from him. He's only 3,800 on FanDuel, so I have no problem getting there either.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, to me, it's a pretty appealing team for one reason or another. Yep. Booker, because everyone's out, and he's a super high usage guy. You look at Booker's numbers with, how many guys do I have to take off? If you take Cannon earlier this season, believe it or not, we talked about this. Cannon influenced Booker's numbers more than people would think. With Warren, Cannon, Ariza, Johnson off the court, 34% usage, 35% assist rates. You take Oubre off the court, you got 36.5% usage. Booker's just going to see unlimited opportunity tonight, and I like that. Let me ask you this. If you were to prioritize the value options, not including Booker, he's not a value play, we love him. Do you have Jackson number 1? And then, because I have Jackson number 1, and then I'd throw Bridges underneath there, and then the other guys, it's kind of tough with Melton. And I guess Melton you could put number 2, kind of interchangeable. But who's your number 1?
Jackson.
Okay.
Yeah, Jackson by a lot, just because I think he gives the most upside.
Me too.
And also I forgot to mention it, but I love DeAndre Ayton here.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that. Let me ask you this: Do you want to spend a lot of time on Portland, Indiana? Because I don't want people to think they're getting shortchanged here.
No, I mean, we can talk about Nurkic and Lillard, but I have nothing else to say.
And nothing for the Pacers?
Not as any sort of priority.
All right. I'm going to be a little bit unorthodox here. Where are you at on Nurkic and Lillard and the Portland team? Because I don't want to make it seem like we're missing this whole game, but I want to cover this Phoenix and Chicago game to close out the show because I think it's more important for the slate.
Sure. Nurkic, I like a lot on DraftKings at 7,100. He played 34 minutes last game, but the thing to me is that without McCollum on the floor, even if you put Lillard on the floor with Nurkic, he has a 30% usage rate going back to last season. So I think he's a good $7,100 play on DraftKings. I get less on FanDuel where he's 8,900. And then Lillard, it's kind of tough to project him because if you just look at him without McCollum on the floor since last season, he has a 38.5% usage rate. If you put Nurkic on the floor, his usage drops to 31%, but his assist percentage climbs from about 32 to 36.5%. I kind of just split the difference and went 35% usage, 35% assists here. At 9K on DraftKings, that gets me a lot of him. On FanDuel, it gets me less because he's just more expensive, but still got to around 36% on FanDuel. So I do like Lillard a lot, and I like Nurkic on DraftKings.
Yeah, and I think those are the two primary guys here for sure. Nurkic specifically on DraftKings. Anybody filling in for McCollum, because I don't think I'm going to even bother trying to get there today. I think there's a bunch of different things that could be done with Hood and Curry and Turner. I think Terry Stotts can just fill in the minutes.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways it can go. I think that Seth Curry on FanDuel, where you can drop him, is perfectly fine. But I'm not getting there on DraftKings.
All right. Now, with the Chicago Bulls, there's no Otto Porter. They are facing a bad Phoenix defense. There's no question about that. The game should be competitive. Where are you at on Markkanen? And I want to be pretty quick here, but where are you at on Markkanen?
I don't feel confident in how I'm projecting him, but I projected him for 34 minutes because the minutes have been down a bit. I projected him for his rates over his last 10 games because, like Josh and I talked about this morning, the rebounding chances have been down a little bit. The usage has been down. I basically get him as a good play, or a reasonable play, because his price tag has dropped so far. But at the same time, I don't want my entire night hinging on him because I'm not convinced that he is 100% healthy or that something isn't wrong.
Yeah, that's where I'm at too. I mean, if he can't get right against Phoenix in this spot, then something's awry. As far as Levine goes and Dunn and everyone, like, they might be in good spots, but man, when you talk about prioritizing, I can't prioritize Levine when I have so many other really good guards. Do you have a lot of Levine tonight?
I don't believe so. No.
All right. And is there anyone else here? Anything you want to do in place of Otto Porter? And I'm assuming Wayne Selden and Harrison fill it in.
Yeah, so am I. I was going to say $3,600 shooting guard on FanDuel. Selden clearly becomes a reasonable punt option, but I don't think it has a massive impact on too much.
All right. It's 6:00. Anything else here? I'm assuming that's it for Chicago.
Yeah, that's it for Chicago. And again, just I love Ayton. Don't be concerned about his minutes last game. He was in foul trouble and then he got ejected.
And is there anything quickly for the Pacers?
No.
I didn't think
whatever,
so.
like Sabonis, Collison, I get, I'm fine with.
Just wanted to cover that one
Yeah.
more time. Anyway, stick around. Well, actually, we will link it in the chat. Somebody made a good point that I said stick around, but it's not stick around because it is on a different. It is somewhere else. So I'm gonna hit that in the chat before you head out. Live Before Lock coming up next with Josh and Eddie. As always, we appreciate you guys watching. Wish you the best of luck tonight. And please, before you head out, if you appreciate what we do here, you want to see more, hit us with a thumbs up, like the video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you always know when our content's dropping next. Until next time, good luck. We'll see you back here on the Deeper Dive.